So welcome folks, good afternoon. Hello, hi, my name is Jonathan Tudor. I'm with the 451st, and welcome to the speaker presentation. We've got 2 days of really great speakers lined up. So today we're going to start off with a discussion about Operation Tidal Wave. And let me just introduce our speaker, Ed Clendenin Jr. He's had a lifelong interest in aviation. In 1989, let me just read this. He and his father were touring an Air Force museum in Dayton, Ohio. As they approached the plane on display there, the Strawberry Bitch, his father commented that that was the plane that he'd flown. And Ed responded, "Yes, I know you were the pilot of a B-24 out of Italy." His father said, "No, that's not what I meant. I flew that plane," is what he said. So starting on that day, Ed's began researching all his father's missions records and all the missions of 376, and he's going to tell us about one of them now. Please welcome Ed Clendenin.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better now? I was asked to talk about Operation Tidal Wave. For those of you who are not familiar, it took place on August 1st of 1943, and it was the low-level bombing of the Pulaski oil fields. This was one of the more famous pictures that was taken during the mission. As you can see, the B-24 just cleared the smoke and is not very high off the ground. The men who participated on this mission had their own anniversaries. Usually around August 1st of every given year, and the 2013 reunion was the 70th anniversary of that reunion. This was going to be their last reunion. It was hosted by the Air Force Museum at Dayton. They put on a great show. They actually opened the doors for us early. The men standing there in front of the Strawberry Bitch are the only survivors that came to the reunion. And we were lucky because 3 of the men in that picture were from the 376, and 2 of them are here with us today. Hopefully they're here. The first one is John Ramey. John, where are you? Can you stand? There he is. John was a tail gunner on the Guy Holt crew, and his name will come up later on in the conversation. And the second man, who's now trying to find his seat, is Tony Sapienza. Tony, wave your hand. He was the crew chief on 8 Ball. And the third man who was here was Paul Ross. Now, he was not on the mission, but he lived in Dayton, and he participated in many of the high-level raids on Pulaski that some of you in the audience participated in, but he decided to come anyway. And to get his picture taken. Okay, the importance of Pulaski for those who don't know. Pulaski produced about 40% of the oil used by the German war machine, and most of it went to the Russian front. And it was no secret how significant it was. The New York Times was actually publishing articles about Pulaski and how vulnerable it is and how important it was as early as 1940. Roosevelt himself was briefed about Pulaski within a week of Pearl Harbor. So there were people in the U.S. military that wanted Pulaski to rise to the top of the target list. And the consequences was that in June of '42, Halpro, which was the seed organization for the 376, actually conducted a raid on Pulaski with 13 airplanes. They did very little damage, but the biggest thing that they did was tell the Germans that a B-24 flying from North Africa could hit Pulaski. Anybody want to tell me where Pulaski is? It's right there. So you can see, flying from North Africa, that's a pretty long distance. So today, there's been a lot of books written about Pulaski, and I couldn't possibly, in the time given, cover it in any great detail. But I want to talk about the one event in the mission that does pertain to the 376 and has come down in history as the wrong turn. Then I'm going to donate some of my time to Nanc McLaughlin, who's going to talk about Wongo Wongo, which is one of the planes that was lost on that mission. You can't hear? Better? Okay, what is Operation Tidal Wave? Basically, it was the Army Air Corps attack on the Ploesti oil fields. It involved 5 bomb groups. Over 177 planes participated and over 1,700 men. There were 5 Medal of Honors awarded after the mission, 3 of them posthumously. It is, I believe, the single largest awarding of the Medal of Honor in the Army Air Corps during the war. And what is the wrong turn, you might ask? The 376 was a lead bomb group in the formation. They missed the IP and they turned too soon. And this single event is probably one of, if not the most controversial aspects if you read about Tidal Wave. But before we get to that, we kind of have to back up and find out how Tidal Wave was planned. In January '43, Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt met at Casablanca and they approved a plan to attack Ploesti. And the first plan was developed by Colonel Whitney, who was with the 9th Air Force in Egypt. And he submitted his report to General Brereton, who was the overall Air Force commander in the theater. There were only 2 bomb groups operating at that time, the 98th and the 376. And altogether, those 2 groups figured they could put 48 airplanes in the air. Whitney proposed that they fly out of Aleppo, and it's the same Aleppo that's currently in the news, being bombed all to crazy. And in effect, this plan was a repeat of what Halpro had done 11 months earlier. And the plan was rejected because people decided that 48 planes couldn't take out the target. So Hap Arnold in March gave the problem to Colonel Jacob Smart, and he's the person, if you read about it, that's credited with coming up with the plan. And the first thing Smart suggested is let's pull the three B-24 groups currently flying out of England and move them down to North Africa. That way we can get a fairly significant number of airplanes. He was going to fly them from North Africa as opposed to Syria. And he proposed 2 concepts for the raid. The first one was the standard high-level raid that most of you men know how to fly. You come in at 20,000 feet or plus and you hit the target. But then he thought, you know what? If we come in at low level, we might catch them by surprise. Now, low-level bombing in the Air Corps was not a new concept, but using a B-24 was. So he needed to demonstrate that we could do this. So the 376 flew 2 demonstration missions in the spring of 1943. The first one was in March to a target in Italy, and the second one was to the Messina harbor facilities. There were 2 planes on each mission for a total of 4 sorties. Well, did it work? Well, here are 2 newspaper clippings from that, and the title of both those articles says "Suicide Rates." That really is going to steal your confidence. But the attack did work, and the other thing that was noted was that it caught the Germans totally by surprise. So that was the conclusion of this demonstration. Now, for further discussion, I want you to note the names of the 4 men who were on that mission. It was Appold, Dufour, Flavel, and Iowin were the 4 pilots. And John Hogan, who was quoted in the article, was Norm Appold's bombardier. Smart took that study and submitted it to General Ent, who was Brereton's aide. Ent, in turn, on June 30th, submitted his recommendation to Brereton. And as far as a high-level approach, it was Ent's opinion that you could destroy Ploesti with 20 missions flown over 2 to 3 months. There would be no new training involved because it involved coming in at high altitude and all the crews were trained for that. Thus, there would be no effect on the morale of these, quote, suicide raids. And the other thing was that it was easier to navigate. Now, for those of you who are thinking about this, let's pretend that you're in an airplane, you're approaching this hotel, and I'm telling you that you want to bomb Cowboy Stadium. So you're coming in from this direction, and Cowboy Stadium is over there 15 miles. Well, if you're at 500 feet, first of all, you got to quickly find this hotel and then know to turn to go heading towards Cowboy Stadium. And you're hoping that I gave you the right directions because you don't have a whole lot of time to make a course correction. If you're at 20,000 feet, you're going to be able to see, oh, this is the hotel, and I think I can see Cowboy Stadium over there. So that's what Smart was trying to tell Brereton, or Ent was trying to tell Brereton. You've got this potential navigation problem. You know, on the low level, he figured, first of all, it's going to take a little over 2 weeks to train the crews. And then with 200 aircrafts, he figured if you could surprise the Germans, you could destroy the target on one mission. But you had to recognize you had navigational problems. He also said it's possible that you could lose the entire attacking force and not do any appreciable damage to the target. And that statement was basically when Brereton had the pre-flight briefing with the crews, when he said to you guys, you're all expendable. The decision was it was worth sacrificing the crews if you could destroy the target. So on July 19th, the crew started training, and the 3 groups were diverted from England. And I think John Ramey gave me this picture taken during one of their practice missions. And you should be able to see the bomb bay doors open on the 1B-24, and you can see its shadow on the ground. So it's coming in pretty low. There's a DVD being sold in the back room, which actually has film. So it's one thing to see the still pictures, something else to see planes flying on these practice missions. They built a dummy target out in the middle of the desert, and the crews practiced attacking the dummy target. Now every 9th Air Force commander was going to be on the airplane. Brereton was going to be the overall mission commander, and he was going to fly in Compton's airplane, sitting between Compton, who was the pilot, and his co-pilot, Ralph Thompson. Smart, who was the planner, was going to be the co-pilot in the 2nd group, the 93rd. And then Ant was going to be in the 3rd group, the 98th, and he was going to be Kane's co-pilot. Well, everything's fine until the day before the mission, and Hap Arnold sent a telegram to Brereton, you ain't going. You know too much. And not only are you not going, but neither is Timberlake, and neither is Smart. So the night before the mission, there was a they had to reshuffle the crews. And basically, I have not found out where Timberlake was supposed to be, but he's quoted as saying that when he was told he wasn't going, he thought his crews were going to think he was a chicken. So the last minute hiccup, I call it, Ant was moved out of the 3rd group up to the 1st group, and he flies as the overall commission commander, and he'll sit on a stool between Compton and Thompson. Ant has to find a replacement because now Kane doesn't have a co-pilot. And Smart leaves, and Baker has to go find a co-pilot, and so he picks a man named John Jerstead. Now Jerstead had already flown his missions, was with the 93rd, but he accompanied them down to North Africa just to find out what was going on, and so he volunteers to be Baker's co-pilot. And that ends up being a rather fateful decision for him. So August 1st comes about, 177 airplanes to take off, and this is their planned route. They're basically going to fly north out of Benghazi, head towards the Greek coast, head slightly to the northeast, approach Ploesti from the west, then make a right turn and head into the target. Then after they bomb, they would turn around and do another right turn and basically repeat the flight profile back to Benghazi. Now for those of you who know anything about Ploesti is not a single target. It actually consists of a series of refineries surrounding Ploesti. And they were all given a code name. White 1, White 2, White 3, White 4, White 5. Those were the ones immediately around Ploesti. Then there were 2, I'll call them remote targets. There was blue, which was south and east of Ploesti, and red, which was north and west of Ploesti. This was the assignment of the targets to the various groups. The 376 being the first one would take out White 1. The 93rd would split into 2 groups and take out White 2 and White 3. The 98th being the 3rd group would take out White 3. The 44th would split into 2 groups, take out White 5 and red. The 389th would actually split off from the formation. It was the trail group and would head to be west of Campania, and then it would make a right turn. And that way all the planes, after they did the course, would all be heading into the southwest direction. This was the plan. This was the 376 formation as it was planned.